Say when you were like, the money started to come in, were you aware of this, or were you just like living your life and you'd hear suddenly you're worth so much and then you're worth so much?
Yeah, we used to ask them, am I a millionaire yet? And I used to say cryptic things like, on paper you are. I said, what's that mean? Am I or aren't I? Well, strictly speaking, you are. I said, wait a minute, is in my bank, are there more than 1 million of those little green things yet? I said, well, it's not actually in a bank, but with the pay and the thing, you know, we think you are. It was actually very difficult to get anything out of the machine, and the accountants never made you feel successful. I remember we had the top 5 in America, and I decided I wanted to buy a country house. And I wasn't asking for the world, you know, it was those days it would have cost about 30,000, top whack. And I went to the accountant and he said, you have to get a mortgage. What do you mean a mortgage? You know, aren't we doing well yet? Got the top 5 in America, the biggest market in the world. There's got to be some money coming up. They always try to keep you down. So you didn't actually get much of a feeling of being very rich. And I mean, the first time I actually saw checks was when I left Apple. And it wasn't me that saw them, it was Linda. Because we'd co-written a few of our early things. I Live and Let Die, she helped me with some words on. So I put her down as co-writer, which the writers didn't like.
Yeah, so
the publishers, ATV didn't like. In fact, they sued me for $1 million here and $1 million in New York. Very charming, I thought, after all I'd done for them.
What happened? I can't remember the result.
We settled some way. Lee Eastman stepped in and settled and did some deal. Did a very good deal, probably, was his top man. But no, the first checks were Linda's. I actually saw royalty checks coming to Linda. I thought, oh, wow, you know, I bet I got a few of them somewhere. But mine never came to me. Always went to a party aforementioned and adjudicated to said company. It always just went down a big well, and we never saw any. So didn't have much of a feeling of being that well off, although we spent it with great glee.
Miles, do you know Miles? Of course,
Miles, which Miles? International
Times.
Times.
Yeah. He told me a story of like going around to the Asher's place. I think you were away on tour. Peter Asher showed him into your room, and he sort of looked at it. He sort of said, "Look," and they opened a cupboard and like.
Yeah, I've heard that story. In fact, I read it. You know, well, I'll tell you. I mean, you know, maybe that's true. I don't remember that, and things do get exaggerated. Maybe I've unexaggerated my memory of it. I never remember actually having a wad of money like that. I certainly.
Because I always heard that like when Brian did his deals.
It was nice of him not to nick it anyway. No, I said
it was the 60s. Yeah, in the 80s it'd been gone.
Maybe that's why I never saw him. He probably had it away. No, I mean I don't really remember that. In fact, I did. That was another thing I must. Because I saw the word Miles, and I did know Miles very well. He was a good mate. Yeah, I haven't seen him for a long time. But he was like my mate. Has he done a Ginsburg? Great, yeah. That'd be all right because he's a good guy, Miles. He'd never get his other name out of him. Barry it is because he was being very cryptic. That's cool. What's your name? Miles. Miles what? Miles. We had many a wondrous stoned evening in his place with listening to all sorts of stuff. Because that was another of the interesting things that. See, I think I've got like a certain personality, and to me, if I give charity, I don't like to shout about it. So some people think I don't give charity. If I know I get into avant-garde stuff, I don't particularly shout, "Hey, you know what I'm into now? Avant-garde stuff." I just kind of do it and get on with it. So way before John met Yoko and got avant-garde, I was like the avant-garde London bachelor with Miles, my pad in St. John's Wood. I was making like 8mm movies, showing them to Antonioni. That was pretty far out stuff, you know. And putting, I had all sorts of theories, you know, of music synchronization, where we put on a Ravi Shankar record to our home movies and it'd synchronize. I just did it with my kids the other day, actually, with our home movies. It does, it fits. I said, yeah, kids. I was doing this in the 60s. But, you know, I had a lot of this, and John used to come from Weybridge, kind of looking slightly goofy and kind of say, wow, you know, great, this is great, you should do more of this. But I always had this sort of attitude of, well, you know, I am sort of what I am, and this is me just learning and getting. So Miles, anyway, turned me on to a lot of that International Times, was it the Green Review or something? Evergreen.
Yeah.
Evergreen, all those little things. There are lots of very far out.
As you tell me about you helping painting individuals.
Yeah, and we used to do a lot of that. But I mean, it never really came out about me. When John went avant-garde, you knew about it.
Was that because he was a self-publicist, or was it just that happened?
No, he's just enthusiasm for whatever he was doing. John was very upfront. I'm not as upfront. I'm just a different personality. You know, it just doesn't occur to me to tell people everything I'm doing. But you know, I was into quite a sort of heavy avant-garde trip. I'd sit with Burroughs in a basement, and there was a couple of gay guys that William Burroughs that knew William. Some guy he'd known from Morocco, who was like friends of mine. I don't know how I got him. Jumped in the bar and ran Faith in the crowd. And it was a scene around London, you know. It didn't matter, gay, schmay, who cared, you know. And we used to sit down in Montague Square, where John eventually got a flat. That was
we got busted.
a connection, where he got busted. That was where we used to go. And I remember sitting around with Burroughs, you know, to do little tapes and backward guitar and cello and crazy stuff. But it didn't occur to me, the next Enemy interview I did, to say, hey, have you heard of William Burroughs, man? He's in town, and he's writing the greatest avant-garde shit in town. You know, maybe it would have been good for me to do that, I don't know. You know, I just kind of do what occurs to me, you know, and sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. But let's say, you know, Yoko turned up to see me first in London. She met me before she met John.
Yes, no, I didn't know that.
See, this is what I mean. You know, and you won't hear it off them either, because they're Scott and Zelda. You know, they want the story just how they put it out. Yeah. She turned up for a charity thing. It was something to do. She wanted manuscripts, something to do with avant-garde music. Cage, John Cage, in New York. There was some benefit for somebody, and she was looking for manuscripts. Any spare lyric sheets you had around, and I was pretending to be on the backs of envelopes and quite funky little things. And to tell you the truth, I didn't want to give her any. Big deal. So, you know, I'm allowed. I don't have to, do I? I didn't want to. I kept these manuscripts. They're very precious to me, and the cause didn't seem so great. I forget what it was. So I said, but my mate might be interested. John, you know, and I gave her John's address, and I think that was first how they hooked up. And then she had her exhibition and stuff, and then their side of the story starts to happen then. Also, I kind of say, you know, I feel like I'm kind of justifying living, you know, which is a bit of a piss off, because I don't really want to have to sit around and justify myself. It's a bit humiliating. But there are lots of things that haven't come out. I mean, for instance, when they bust up their marriage, she came through London. He was in LA doing Pussycats with Nielsen and having a generally quite crazy time of it all. And he was the guy, you know, the famous story, don't you know who I am? He says to the waitress, she says, yeah, the jerk with the Kotex on his head. And he was doing that, and fighting and photographers and haranguing the Smothers Brothers. And generally being quite crazy, because he genuinely loved Yoko, and they had a very, very deep, strong relationship. But they were into all sorts of crazy stuff, and I don't know the half of that. A lot of people don't know the half of that. There's hints that it keep coming out in books, but you never know whether you can believe those.
You mean occultism or
all sorts. Well, I certainly did get a postcard. We all got postcards from Yoko saying, go around the world in a southeasterly direction, it would be good for you. You're allowed to stop at 4 places. George Martin got one of those, and he said, it'd be all right if I go to Montserrat? And I said, no. I think John did the voyage. John went on a southeasterly direction around the world. But we all kind of went, sure, we'll go around the southeast. Well, I mean, I sat with John and Yoko. Well, I was going to tell you about the marriage thing. I remember, see, there's so many memories come flooding in. And it's like a psycho session the minute I get on this stuff. I'm on a couch, you know, and I'm just trying to purge it all, you know. I sat at dinner with them once. Linda and me came over and we sat at dinner. And John said, you fancy getting a tree panning thing done? I said, well, what is it? He said, well, you have a hole bored in your skull and, you know, it relieves the pressure on the man. I said, well, look, we're sitting at dinner and this is seriously being offered as a serious. It wasn't a joke.
It was in the 60s, by the way.
Yeah.
Because Arab people were into that.
Yeah, they were into it. Now this wasn't a joke. This was like, let's go next week. We know a guy who can do it, and maybe we all go together.
That was third on.
Yeah. I said, well, look, you go and have it done, and if it works great, tell us all about it. We'll all have it done. But I'm afraid I've always been a little bit cynical about stuff like that. Thank God, I think. Because I think, there's so much crap you've really got to be careful of. But John was more open to things like that. I think his quote about Klein kind of sums it up. Anyone who's been so bad-mouthed can't be that bad. And there was this kind of crazy reverse logic that anyone who was that bad must be good.
All right, yeah.
And it's very difficult when you start going crazy.
Hitler must be okay.
Hitler presumably must have had some good points. But this is what I mean. It's very difficult to cope with that kind of thinking. Because you're having to, it's bad enough just trying to be logical. But trying to be reverse logical is like very difficult. And I remember getting letters from priests. This priest in a monastery used to send letters where he turned all the words backwards. And that was a hard habit to get out of. Don't know if you've ever gone through that. Where God becomes dog, live becomes evil, and all that stuff. And he was doing this trick. And you start looking at every word then. Memo is memo. Yeah, it's like numerology. You can't look at numbers without doing the calculation. And I had to train myself to stop, man. I don't want to know about this. I'm sure anyone who's interested, great, good luck to you. I wouldn't put you down. I'm sure there's a lot in it. But I'm crazy enough anyway.
Because were you? You were smoking a lot of dope as well. Were you getting paranoid as well? It does make. It doesn't help.
No, it doesn't. No. Yes, getting quite paranoid. Yeah. I was telling you about the marriage thing when they broke up. Yoko came through London and visited us, which was very nice. And Linda and I just got married just a bit before. We're living in this big sort of old house in St John's Wood. And Yoko came by and we started talking. Obviously the important subject for us is what's happened. You've broken up then, you're here, he's there. What's happened? And she was very nice and confided in us that, it's kind of broken up. But she was being very strong about it, but very, not feminist, but being a strong woman rather than just submitting to it all. And she said, no, he's got to work his way back. If he's to get back with me, I can't just go. And she couldn't, which is good, I think she would be mad to just go and prostrate herself at his feet kind of thing. But she said, no, he's going to have to work it. And I said, well, look, if I see him, are you still in love? Do you still sort of love him? She said, yeah. I said, well, would you think it was an intrusion if I kind of said to him, look, man, she loves you and there's a way to get back and you can, it sounds like Beatles songs, it sounds like those, I send all my loving from me to you. And I said this to Yoko, I said, would that be okay? Would you hate that? But we might see him around, so I would like to be a mediator in this because I think the two of you obviously got something pretty strong going. And she said she didn't mind. So that was that visit. And we went out to visit them and they were doing Pussycats. And it was weird, kind of just sort of meet and everything. But then I just said to John, he was in the house with Nielsen, Jesse, Keith Moon, and a few of the guys. And they were all, it was a pretty crazed house there. You hear some of the stories came out of that house. And it was pretty wild days. And I said to him, hey, come here. Come in the back room, I want to talk to you privately. So we went in the back room and I sat him down privately and I said, look, I feel a bit like a matchmaker here, but this girl of yours, she really still loves you. Do you love her? Because I felt like a judge or somebody, in a divorce court, divorce settlement. And he said, yeah, I do. He said, but I don't know what to do. And I said, well, I'll talk to her. So she does still love you, but you're going to have to work your little ass off, man. You have to get back to New York. You have to take a separate flat. You have to send her roses every fucking day. You have to work at it like a bitch, and you just might get her back. Which is sort of what he did. But you'll never hear that story. You won't hear that off them because, I don't know, it gives me too much, I'm too in the story then. They don't want me in the story. They prefer to think John, if you hear it from John's point of view, it'll just be that he spoke to her on the phone and she said to him, come back and sort of work.
But I always thought found it interesting the fact that it seemed too much like coincidence to me, the fact he got married, a month after you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it was we spurred each other into marriage. I mean, you know, they were very strong together, which left me out of the picture. So I got together with Linda, and then we got strong, got our own kind of strength. And I used to listen to a lot of what they said. I remember him saying to me, "You've got to work at marriage," which is something I still remember as a bit of advice. You know, I still remember that. And then, yeah, I think again, you know, they were probably a little bit sort of peeved that we got married first. Probably a little way, you know, just minor jealousies. And then so they got married.
But I wondered if
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, who knows? You know, I'm making it up anyway.
I wondered if there's that thing, you know, like you have two blokes who are like good mates, you know,
Yeah.
and then, you know, one of them finds a girl and the other, you know, maybe the other one doesn't, whatever. You know, there's like a lot of kind of, you know, the friendship
happens often.
breaks up, you know,
Yeah.
and there's quite a lot of bitterness and acrimony.
Wedding
goes down.
bells.
It seemed like one of them.
Wedding Bells is what it was. The song, the Wedding Bells were breaking up that old gang of mine.
Sure, yeah.
And we used to know that song. Gene
Yes.
Vincent did it. And we used to sing it. Oh, the gangs are on the come. They forgot Sweet Adeline. And we used to know that song. So the association we had when we were young was Army. It was sort of Army song. Where, you know, Army buddies and Wedding Bells are breaking up this Army gang. But for us, the Army became the Beatles. So we always kind of knew that one day Wedding Bells would come true. Well, and that was when it did. Still, you know, I mean, the thing is, trouble is, in trying to sort of set the record straight and trying to do all this, I don't want to sort of blame John or make anyone think. I mean, I did this thing recently with Hunter Davis, and they pulled out the one line, John could be a manoeuvring swine. Well, I still stick to that, but I better not say it to the Sun, you know, because I'll just get hauled over the coals again. The point was, John was a very human guy, and if you got in a business meeting with him, I mean, I'll tell you exactly why I said that, was that we had a business meeting to break up the Beatles, one of the famous ones that we've been having, still haven't done it, 17 years later. We had this meeting where we were in New York, and we all flew in, especially George came off his tour, his disastrous tour he had, it wasn't too good. Ringo flew in, Ike flew in, we were all in New York at the Plaza for the big final settlement meeting. And John was at Dakota, and as you know, his New York geography, that's like half a mile away. And John sent a balloon over, listen to this balloon. Well, you've got to be pretty cool to kind of handle that stuff, you know. Oh yeah, George, blue is cool. Rung him up. You fucking maniac, gonna take your fucking dark glasses off and come and look at us, man. And gave him a whole load of that shit. And later, I sort of, around at the same time, another meeting, similar thing, where John, everything was going swinging, we had it all settled. Well, the last minute, John asked for an extra £1 million. That's all he wanted, just an extra £1 million. So of course that meeting blew up, disarray, and that finished that particular meeting. Later, when we got a bit friendlier, you know, because occasionally there were little stepping stones of friendship in this kind of Apple Sea, you know. And one of those times, I said to him, "What was all that about, man? I mean, why did you actually up the $1 million?" He said, "I just wanted cards for my hand. I wanted cards to play with." Now that's a manoeuvre. That's the kind of, I wouldn't do that.
Number.
As somebody who's, it's good. It's a good, absolutely standard business practice. You know, he just wanted cards to play with. He wanted a couple of jacks to up your pair of nines. And that's, you know, he was quite open about that. But of course, if I come out now that he's sort of died and all the tragedy that's sort of surrounded him, particularly, you know, the assassination, the craziness, that it would just be a maniac and stuff. It wouldn't just be a car accident. You know, so it was particularly bad news for everyone. In a way, I'm kind of expected to just sort of say he was a saint, he was always a saint, I remember him as a saint, and I love him as a saint. But that would be a lie. He was one great guy, and part of his greatness was that he wasn't a saint. He was a great guy, but he was pretty sacrilegious and pretty upfront about it, you know. That was half the fun.
You got an awful lot of shit for that remark you made, like when you were asked after you'd been killed. You know, it's a drag.
It's a drag, yeah.
But that seemed to me like I didn't understand why, because that seemed to me like classic understatement. You know, I could envisage saying that. I mean, when you're saying it's a drag, you're always actually saying it's appalling. You know.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But I think why some politicians are so successful is that they have a little bleeper box in their head before they say things. They run things through their mind and they can see it as a headline. And if it doesn't look good, they edit it.
Sure.
I have that sometimes, but I don't always have that, particularly in moments like that, where all my bleepers go out the window. I mean, we were very surprised to go to work that day. That was like a kind of shock, because I wasn't going to sit at home. I'll tell you that. Just sit at home and watching television and watching the news.
You went to Air, didn't you?
So we went into Air London. George Martin rang me up and said, "Do you want to cancel? I understand if you do." I said, "No way." I said, I got to walk through this day. So we came up, and it wasn't too bad getting in there, and we did our work of sorts. There was a track called Rain Clouds we were working on, so it was pretty strange. And there was a little Aeolian, Paddy of the Chieftains, Paddy, the Aeolian pipesman. He worked on it. He was good, actually, because he was just the right kind of character to see that day, because he's like a sort of magic leprechaun, Paddy. So it was nice to sort of have a magic person around. It was as if he was a sort of guru somehow, sort of sent to help that day out. So we just beaving on, and just kind of, occasionally sort of. And what had happened is people would do jokes, not meaning it. Kind of say, "Well, we'll do the film next week. Yeah, we'll shoot it." And when you heard the word "shoot," you go, "Oh," and everyone, everything you said seemed to be "shoot," or "well, we'll, don't gun me." And every time you spoke, you seemed to say all these terrible things. And then eventually, I just thought, well, I've just got to go home now. There's no more work to be done. Like I can't stay here all night. I couldn't hide it any longer. Well, I came out of the place, and somebody just stuck the proverbial microphone, in the window of the car, which I'm mad enough to have open. Because see, I'm quite outgoing. I was telling the fans, "Thank you, it's all right." Fab, Macca, thumbs aloft, wacky. To me, that's just being nice. That's just, you see every Liverpool, "All right, mate, so do it." It's ordinary to me. I'm not going to carry any can for that kind of shit. To me, that's
it also helps
okay.
it out as well, doesn't it? I mean,
Well, they've now started saying that it's my armour against the fans. It
Nick
isn't.
Lowe's said that.
Yeah, it isn't. It isn't an armour. It's a perfectly straightforward way of saying being friendly with people. Anyway, so they stuck the thing in the thing, and he said, "What do you think of the murder of John Lennon or something?" And I actually, if you heard how I said it, it was what you thought. I said, "It's a drag." And I meant, if I could have, I might have just lengthened that word drag for about 1,000 years to get the meaning in it. But it was all over and gone with. Now, of course, the minute that appears in print, in black and white, Paul McCartney, I'm being asked to move, the editors have been to it, and so on and so on, and I'm just one of a million punters saying what it is. Paul McCartney, they did in downtown London last night at 9 o'clock, was asked by our reporter, a correspondent, "What is it feeling to wear on hearing the death of his dear long Rosa?" His quote was, "It's a drag." Hey-ho, on to other matters. In the Philippines today, and people are sure, "It's a drag," that's what he said.
No, I
What
understood
can you
it when I
do?
heard it.
You
I'm sure a lot of
understood it,
people, I'm sure a lot of people, none kind of Fleet Street report editors did understand it, It's just...
Well, Hunter Davis was on the television that night giving a very reasoned account of John. Yes, and he was, he sprang right up there. The puppet sprang right up, and all
I thought it was a bit odd.
I thought it was well tasteless. We all did actually. Jesus Christ, everyone ready with the answer, aren't we? Aren't we just ready with the summary? Mind you, Hunter had admitted to us years ago that he already had our obituaries written. They're all written and on file at the Times. They just update them every so often,
I know.
which is kind of chilling to learn. That he'd already done us. Well, so obviously he just pulled his obituary out for John and went to it, But, the question is, which is the more sensitive thing? My thing or his thing? You pay your money, he takes your choice. He was the guy I rang up about manoeuvring swine too, so it shows what a buddy he is. Immediately put it in print, he didn't sort of edit it out and say, well, to give him his due, he did actually, in the larger context of it. It was quite nice, it was quite reasonable, and he put my point of view. But again, that incident reminded me of John saying we're bigger than Jesus. which is a Maureen Cleave article for the Evening Standard, and John and Maureen were good friends. And in context, it was actually John saying to the church, "Hey, wake up! We're bigger than you." You actually read that article.
Yeah,
he's saying
you should get your shit together.
Exactly. He was saying, the church is in decline, which it certainly is. Certainly nothing wrong with that statement. Well, here anyway. It's a lot of born again in America, Reagan and that. But over here, it's having a hard time. And he was commenting on that, and she sort of so he said, "Well, for Christ's sake," he said, "I mean, we're bigger than Jesus these days." And he meant the church audiences, the church congregations or audiences are on the decline, And he was as always trying to be helpful and trying to just give his point of view. But you take that out, you send it to Selma, Alabama, you put it on the front page, and you've got little 11-year-olds thumping on your coach window saying, "Blasphemer, devil worshipper, blasphemer, devil worshipper." Never forget that sight of a little blonde kid trying to get to us, and he would have done it if he'd have got to us too. But I mean, at 11, what does this kid know of life and religion or anything? He's just been whipped up. Are they? Fine. So we've got a little longer, presumably, have we? Where are they? Where are they?
They're just downstairs.
Okay, so want to come and see us something?
Yeah, I'd love another one.
Can we have a little more and tell them we'll be 10 minutes, just to give them a wind up? Okay.